So today, we talked a little bit about the fat oxidizing state. We talked a little bit about how the real unit of energy of the body is not a calorie, it's ATP. We talked about how silly the idea of the calories in, calories out model was to begin with. And so today I kind of want to get into what the actual function is. So if you look at this from a chemical standpoint, which is the way that I look at the whole thing, what you really want to look at as far as generating muscle tissue, losing fat, getting healthy, it's all entirely about utilization of ATP. ATP being the molecule of energy our body uses for fuel and for power, for everything. So the big thing is that, getting in a fat oxidizing state will move your body into a position where it's using fat as your fuel source to create ATP. And so in that case, we can now use the fat that's on our body to fuel everything we're doing. This is how fasting becomes very, very healthy. This is how fasting helps us lose the body fat, but also how it helps us tremendously create new muscle tissue and new healthy organs. So one of the big things when we talk about ATP creation happens at a much higher amount per unit of fat than it does from glucose or from proteins. So it's like 100 from fat, 80-ish from carbohydrates or fat, or glucose, and like 40 or 50 from proteins. So per unit, equal unit of energy. Unit of mass. So you definitely want to be in that fat burning state to create all this ATP. And the thing is that people go, well, how do I maximize that? Well, it's easy. You maximize it in the recovery. So, if you look at the calorie system, they always talk about working out. No, you got to work out to burn calories. You got to walk to burn calories, blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. Yes, it requires ATP. It requires energy to work out. It requires energy to go walk. It requires energy to do all those things. However, rebuilding your tissue takes a giant amount more. Think of it this way. What takes more resources, costs more money, and is harder to do? Destroy a building or build a building? Massive difference. Destroying a building, super easy. Building the building, tons of resources, tons of money, tons of stuff. Same exact thing happens in the body. So what you really want to do is go to the gym, tear down that muscle tissue, but then really focus on how your body is going to repair, regenerate, and rebuild that tissue. So now that gets into all of the chemistry of how the body works. And here's the cool thing. If you decide you want to do that, the very best way to recover, the very best way to build tissue is also the exact same thing you do to get as healthy as possible. Because again, when we talk about the body, health is good chemicals in versus bad chemicals out. And if we're giving the body the best possible chemicals we can to ensure healthy new growth, and we're keeping all the waste out because we don't want to hinder that new healthy growth, you're going to be as healthy as you possibly can. So the way that, if you look at it from this standpoint, the way you're doing it, the way you're building your body up, the way you're getting into, not all of you are going to want to get into contest shape, but if you want to get into contest shape, there's a way to do it where you're maximizing your body's full potential of being as healthy as possible. And so that's really where all the things that I've done and I've put together for me and for all the patients I work with and everything else, that's where the secret sauce is. So when I start going through all the supplementation I'm taking, and there's a lot of stuff you guys don't have to take. I take it because I'm around sick people all day long, and so I have to take extra stuff. But as I go through it, you guys will kind of understand why we're doing things. One of the big ones on this is your body doesn't want protein. It wants amino acids. Quit giving it really hard to digest proteins with no digestive enzymes and then wonder why you're not getting the gains you're getting. Your body takes a protein, digests it, breaks it into its individual amino acids, absorbs those amino acids, then uses those amino acids to build the body. Lysine helps fight viruses, which is phenomenal at it. We're going to go into that later. Leucine and isoleucine are the two biggest for muscle creation. So this is a funny thing. This is why everybody uses whey protein and pea protein in their protein powders, because whey and pea have the highest concentration of leucine out of the vast majority of the proteins you have access to. However, you can't look at it that way. You have to look at it as what yields the best amount of amino acids. The answer to that is actually collagen. So people are asking me all the time, how much protein do you take? I'm like, I have no idea. And they're like, what? I'm like, during a normal day, like it's a fasting day, I will only consume collagen. That's it. But that collagen helps my body to create sugars to run my brain and my blood so that I'm not in ketosis, my breath doesn't stink. But it also gives me all the building blocks I need to repair the tissue I'm damaging while I'm in the gym. Then I also take a lot of branched chain amino acids. Again, isoleucine and leucine. So I take them right after I work out, and as soon as I go to bed, right before I go to bed, so that I have all the tools I need to regenerate, recover, and heal. So that's where a lot of this gets into. It's how are we regenerating? How are we healing? So in order to do that, you have to maximize your sleep. You've got to maximize your hormone functionality. We're going to get into a lot of that here in a minute. You got to maximize all of the micronutrients. You know, the iodine, the copper, the molybdenum, like all those little micronutrients that your body desperately, selenium, that your body desperately needs. So there's two ways of getting them. You can either eat really high grade, nutritious, nutrient dense foods, or you can take supplementation. Good news, bad news. The supplementation thing is super easy. It makes things really, really easy. Bad news, if you're wanting to eat super high end, super nutritious, nutrient dense foods, if you live in America, you're not going to get it. Our foods are full of poison. They're full of glyphosate, which is why everybody thinks gluten's a problem. They're full of atrazine, which is a massive estrogen dominant function. It's going to lean real hard on those estrogen receptors, suppressing testosterone and increasing the negative effects of estrogen. And here's the fun thing. You pull the blood, won't show up in the blood, but your body says, oh, no, we have estrogen levels of 40. But you have this giant activation of the estrogen receptor site, so it's like you have 200 levels of estrogen. So there's a little bit of chemistry in that as well. We can go through those as we get there. But that's really the big thing. It's what are we doing to maximize the healing? And guys, the time that you heal and repair is when you're asleep. So if your sleep is crap, your gains are going to be crap. And so we've got to maximize sleep. So there's a couple different things that we do for this. The first thing I do is I always make sure whenever somebody comes in the office, and I recommend you guys do this too, make sure you get somebody who can read these labs and read these tests and understands what's going on. But anyway, so I do echocardiograms, I do calcium CTs. So the number one thing we want to make sure is that your body's producing enough oxygen to make everything work. So we got to make sure the heart's in good shape, and we have to make sure there's no plaquing in the arteries. Cholesterol blood labs have zero bearing on this. And UCLA just did a big study not too long ago that showed that 75% of people who were in their research study who died from heart attacks and strokes had good or normal cholesterol levels, because cholesterol in and of itself is the major fuel source for your heart. It's a phenomenal fuel source. LDL cholesterol is fantastic for you. What happens is that it oxidizes. So you allow the metabolic chemistry of your body to go sideways. You produce a lot of reactive oxidative stress, also known as free radicals. That damages the LDL, makes it oxidize LDL, also damages the blood vessels. When those two things meet, damaged blood vessel and oxidized LDL, that's when we have the problem. Again, the only way to fix that is with nutrition, because you have to denature those free radicals with chemistry. So, and again, as we go through this, we're going to get into that. But that's kind of how that works. So you've got to make sure that your heart's good. So echocardiogram is a video of your heart beating, making sure there's no leaks, making sure the pressure's right, the amount of blood that's actually kicked out of the heart is the right amount. It's called the ejection fraction. So we got to make sure that's good. And then the calcium CT is an X-ray of the chest, shows us if you have any plaquing. There's a really cool one that uses dye and AI technology to map the inside of the blood vessels. It's a great test. You most likely don't need it. So do the calcium CT, do the echocardiogram, make sure your heart's good, and then do a sleep study. And people tell me all the time, oh, I sleep great. I feel awesome when I wake up in the morning. I don't care. I want objective measurements. Is the oxygenation in your body as high as possible during your sleep? If you're at 95 or above, you're fine. If you're at 88, 89, medically, they'll tell you you're fine, you don't have apnea. I'm going to disagree with that, because again, this isn't what's available to survive. What we're talking about is what is the best function to thrive. And so I want your oxygen, 95 or above at night. So when I did my first sleep study, it was abysmal. And what I ended up having to do is I got a CPAP, that helped, but it didn't get me where I wanted to go. So I have an oxygen concentrator hooked to my CPAP, blowing pure oxygen in my face all night long, so my oxygenation is as high as possible. So that's going to help tremendously with not only burning fat, but rebuilding everything in the body. Remember, when we oxidize the fat, we're adding oxygen to it. So without oxygen, you're not going to get where you want to go. So speaking of oxygen, the other thing I do a lot is while I'm like researching and reading, I'll do it in my hyperbaric chamber. With hyperbaric oxygen, you can increase the oxygen to the tissues by up to 1,000%. We use this a lot during COVID. It was the number one thing that kept people alive. If you do any diabetic research, it'll show that people who have wounds, like cuts on their feet, and their feet's not healing, what they can do is they can go through and put them in a hyperbaric chamber, and it will oxygenate the blood, and all of a sudden the wounds start to heal. the way it works is it uses what's called Boyle's law and actually forces oxygen in between the red blood cells into the plasma or into the water of the blood. So think about like if you're making soda, put the CO2 cartridge in, you go, and all of a sudden there's bubbles in the water. Same concept, except for you're not going to have bubbles in your blood. You can have oxygen throughout. So it's a great way to do it. All my pro athletes get these chambers in their house. Massive changes in the rehab, the recovery, and everything else. It's also amazing for concussions. There's a whole protocol I use with hyperbaric chambers for this, and we usually cut concussion times in half. So like the NFL will be like, you're going to be out for 6 weeks, and 2 or 3 weeks later you're fine, because again, it's chemistry. But that's kind of where we're going. So as we go through this supplementation, the thing about it is that we're trying to maximize the chemistry. And I'll tell you ahead of time, I run on the 120% rule. If I think that if it's something that's not going to damage me if I take twice as much as I'm supposed to, I figure out more or less what I think I need, and I take 120% of that, because I don't know, like if I have a really stressful day, or if I didn't sleep great, or barometric pressure is up, whatever. I just want to make sure that my body has more than it needs. Because when we start talking about recovery, when we start talking about chemistry, there's something called a limiting reagent. So if you have 10 of this unit and 10 of this unit and 3 of this unit, and it's equal, these 2 are going to be fine. This third unit you only had 3 of. Once you're done with that, you can no longer do any more chemical reactions. And so that's the thing. We want to make sure we have more than enough of everything we need, unless it's detrimental. So like some of the fat soluble stuff like vitamin E, we're really careful with. But some of the other stuff that doesn't matter, like B vitamins, we're going to make sure we have as much as we can, because methylated B vitamins are super hypercritical to all function in the body. So we're going to start tomorrow on some of the supplementation stuff we're doing and why. There is no particular order. I'm literally just going to grab it out of the cabinet next in line type of deal. A lot of this stuff we have on the website. And remember, anything that you guys get from either the Seawell store or from pillarsofwellness.com, all the profit from those supplements that you buy is going to go to our charity, helping veterans and first responders beat PTSD and addiction using ketamine and psychedelics. So a little touch on that. If you guys have depression, if you guys have issues with anxiety, if you guys are having issues mentally, look into ketamine, look into the psychedelics. It is phenomenal. The research is unbelievable. We've been able to do things with people like ending their addictions, ending their PTSD in like 3 weeks, and it's 90% is gone. The research shows 85% of the time you can end PTSD and addiction with ketamine. So look at ketamine, look at psilocybin. Cannabis kind of fits in this realm as well. But these are the things that we need to start looking at. These things that help the body heal and help the body move into the direction they need to go. Because that's really where health and wellness is. I always tell people wellness is good chemicals in versus bad chemicals out. And it's defined as the highest quality of life for the longest quantity of time. And so, that's kind of it. It's really kind of depends upon how strong your mind is and how much you want it and what you're willing to do. That's where this all comes down. So on that, so Steve Kuklo and I are going to get together today about 3:30. We're going to live stream that. We're going to talk about all the stuff about getting involved in signing up for and starting to do professional bodybuilding shows. So he's going to walk me through some of that. We're going to talk about posing and all that type of stuff. So we'll do that live today. Check that out. If you guys have any questions at chalmerswellness.com, or just toss them in the comments and we'll get to them. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks. Bye.